Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly epic, completely cutthroat clash between two of history's absolute greatest inventors. We're talking about the fight over exactly how to power the world. It's a wild story full of absolute genius, serious corporate greed, and, well, the birth of electricity exactly as we know it. Let's jump right in. I want you to just look around wherever you are right now. Every single time you flip a light switch, or plug in your phone, or boot up your computer, you are actually tapping into the results of an invisible, incredibly high-stakes war that raged well over a century ago. So it really begs the question, who actually powers your modern world? Is it Thomas Edison, or is it Nikola Tesla? Let's figure it out. Okay, let's dive into this. Part 1, the battle for power, Edison versus Westinghouse. So we're traveling all the way back to the late 1880s for a classic David versus Goliath corporate showdown. In one corner, you've got the Goliath, Thomas Edison. This guy had the established monopoly, he had deep financial backing from massive titans like J.P. Morgan, and his whole empire was built entirely on direct current, or DC. But then in the other corner, you have these truly formidable challengers. You've got the industrialist George Westinghouse and a brilliant Serbian engineer you might have heard of named Nikola Tesla. Together, these two were championing a completely revolutionary but honestly pretty untested system called alternating current, or AC. Take a look at this early Westinghouse AC system right here, dating back to 1887. What you're seeing is just pure ingenuity. Westinghouse didn't just build a new machine. He went out and aggressively acquired patents, specifically Tesla's, to create an entirely new electrical ecosystem from scratch. And this was a direct existential threat to Edison's massive patent royalties. You have to remember, Edison wasn't just defending some abstract scientific theory here. He was defending his absolute fortune. Moving on to part 2, AC versus DC explained. Let's get into the actual science of these currents. Now, to understand why this rivalry got so incredibly fierce, we need to quickly visualize the invisible science that separated these two warring systems. The crucial difference really comes down to how the electrons themselves actually move. With Edison's direct current, or DC, those electrons flow steadily in one single direction. Think of it kind of like water flowing down a river. But there's a huge catch. DC couldn't easily be converted to different voltages back then. That meant it suffered massive power loss over distance. Edison was literally limited to about a 1-mile transmission radius, so he had to build these expensive, dirty generators practically all over town. Alternating current, on the other hand, does exactly what it sounds like. It reverses direction constantly, about 60 times a second here in the US. And that unique little property completely solved the distance problem because it allowed power to be sent over miles and miles of wire without losing its punch. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how they pulled it off. This is Tesla's dynamo electric machine patent from 1888, and it holds the key to solving that distance problem. The true genius of Tesla's AC system was that it was totally compatible with transformers. A transformer could easily step up AC power to super high, efficient voltages for long-distance travel, and then safely step it down to a nice low voltage right before it enters your home. Edison's DC system, it simply couldn't do this. Not at all. Which brings us to part 3, Edison's dark propaganda campaign. It's about to get a bit grim. Faced with a vastly superior piece of technology, Edison realized pretty quickly that his DC empire was staring down rapid obsolescence. He knew he couldn't win on the engineering, so he decided to try and win on fear. And man, he sank to some incredibly dark depths to do it. He launched this really visceral, horrific public spectacle campaign designed purely to create an emotional terror of AC power in the public's mind. In 1888, Edison's team literally started publicly electrocuting stray dogs, cats, and even calves using AC power. By 1890, they had secretly funded and built the very first electric chair. And the grim climax of all this, that came in 1903, with the filmed public execution of Topsy the elephant at Coney Island. Edison's team was so absolutely ruthless in their anti-AC branding that they actually coined a new slang term for being electrocuted. They called it getting Westinghoused. Seriously, they wanted the general public to directly associate their biggest competitor's brand name with a horrifying instantaneous death. It's corporate manipulation at its absolute darkest, actively exploiting public emotion just to suppress scientific progress. And about that 1890 electric chair execution I mentioned a second ago, it was used on a convicted murderer named William Kemmler. The whole thing was a botched, horrifying mess that essentially ended up burning the man alive. When George Westinghouse heard about this incredibly gruesome spectacle, which, remember, was orchestrated using his AC technology, he just grimly remarked to the press, they would have done better using an axe. Then there's the famous 1903 film of Topsy the elephant being electrocuted. That film was actively distributed by Edison's own film company as pure, unadulterated propaganda cinema. But what the film completely left out was a really dark, hidden truth. Before those 6,600 volts of AC were applied, handlers actually secretly fed Topsy carrots laced with 460 grams of potassium cyanide. Yeah, Edison rigged the entire demonstration with poison to absolutely guarantee a visually dramatic, terrifying death. A death that he could then turn around and blame entirely on alternating current. Let's move on to part 4, the triumph of AC, where engineering finally wins out. So, despite all that relentless, frankly terrifying fear-mongering, superior engineering did eventually prevail. The major turning point happened in 1893. The massive Chicago World's Fair needed electricity, right? So Edison's General Electric confidently swoops in and bids $554,000 to wire the whole fair with DC. But check out the winning proposal. $399,000, that was the massively underbid contract from George Westinghouse, promising to power the entire fair using Tesla's AC system. And he was just a breathtaking success. Westinghouse and Tesla successfully illuminated 200,000 light bulbs at the fair. It was this glowing, totally indisputable victory that completely shattered Edison's whole narrative of danger. This spectacular public display proved to everyone that AC was both safe and scalable. And that success directly led to Westinghouse securing the ultimate prize, the contract to harness the immense, roaring power of Niagara Falls. From there, the idea spread like wildfire. AC scaled up incredibly fast. By November of 1896, AC power generated at Niagara Falls was flowing a staggering 32 kilometers to power industries all the way in Buffalo. The writing was clearly on the wall. Even Edison's own company, General Electric, was eventually forced to quietly adapt AC technology just to survive. Alternating current became the unquestioned global standard. The war was officially over. Or so we thought. Part 5, DC's modern comeback. Welcome to the 21st century. Okay, get ready for a massive plot twist. The war didn't actually end in the 1890s. We are actually living through a major DC renaissance right now. Now, what's really interesting about this is, yes, AC absolutely still dominates our large-scale grid transmission, and it powers the wall outlets in your house. But take a look at these modern applications. Computers, LED lights, solar cells, electric vehicles. I mean, the battery in a Tesla car actually charges 8 times faster when you use DC. The very device you were using to watch this explainer, right now, it literally relies on Edison's direct current to function. And this is where Edison's old fatal flaw, the fact that he had to generate power locally, suddenly becomes a massive modern strength. Let's look at the concept of a microgrid. It's essentially a localized energy system, kind of like rooftop solar panels on an office building. Well, solar panels naturally generate DC power. So instead of highly inefficiently converting that DC into AC to send it to the main grid, and then converting it back to DC for all the office computers, a microgrid just generates and uses the DC right there, locally. It's incredibly efficient. Plus, it's an absolute game changer for bringing clean power to the nearly 1 billion people globally who still don't have access to traditional AC grid infrastructure. On top of all that, modern technology finally stepped up and solved Edison's distance problem. Enter HVDC, or high voltage direct current. Thanks to modern electronics, stuff that definitely didn't exist back in the 1880s, we can actually now step DC voltages up and down. And it turns out for extreme ultra-long distances, we're talking over 500 kilometers, HVDC is actually more efficient than AC. No way, right? It's literally connecting regional grids together and enabling massive intercontinental cables, like one planned to carry renewable energy 4,000 kilometers from Morocco all the way to the UK. We have essentially reached a sort of hybrid armistice where AC and DC finally work together. So we clearly need both to power our future. Which brings us to a final thought I want to leave you with today. We often really like to think that the best ideas naturally just rise to the top on their own merit, right? But looking back at Edison's completely ruthless campaign, the electrocuted animals, the rigged, poisoned demonstrations against Tesla and Westinghouse, we really have to ask, does superior technology truly win on merit alone? Or does public perception actually dictate progress? Take a moment to think about the messy, sometimes incredibly dark history hiding right behind the scientific progress we take for granted every single time we flip a switch. Thanks so much for watching The Explainer, and as always, keep asking questions.